So I'm going back to the paint worksheet and looking at the bedroom, Joan's bedroom. Now, that was one of your assignments. You probably got graded for it and everything fine, but let me kind of walk you through it a little bit of what we need to think about. So if you remember, the bedroom for the Jones had these dimensions on the floor plan. And in the lecture, I said you need to take off the wall thicknesses because these were going to center lines. Now the true wall thickness is 4.5 inches. You have a 3.5 inch stud wall, half inch on one side of drywall, half inch on the other side of drywall, and it's 4.5 inches. For simplification purposes, I said just take off 2. That's going to be good enough. Remember, these are still estimates, and there's always a little bit of slop in the number. You want to be as accurate as possible, but you don't have to go to like the 10th decimal place. So if we add this distance of the bedroom from this point to this point, it's 13.6 plus 2'6" minus the 2 inches of this wall and the 2 inches of this wall. And that's what we've got here. We've got 13.6 plus 2.6 is 16 foot, minus 2 inches is 15.8, and 15.8 in decimal is 15.67 in feet. Same thing for the other wall. This one did not go to the outside. Sometimes dimensions will go to the outside, and I said in class we'll take off about 6 inches for that one. And again, it's a 2x6 wall. It's got exterior, it's got interior, but in this case we don't have to worry about it because the dimension string stops on the inside, so we don't have to go through that wall. So we're good. Remember, for this paint and all these finishes so far, we've only been doing the interior surface. So this is 7'11" plus 2'8" equals 10 foot minus the 2 inches, because there is this wall to consider only. And then that comes out to 910, which means 9.83 feet. That's the decimal formula. So now we can put that into the worksheet we have. And the worksheet we have works fine if the ceilings are flat. Bedroom number 1 would be a standard height ceiling of 8 foot. So we have the 4 walls, and we've got the dimension here. I personally think instead of perimeter, we should say lineal feet. And consider it that way too, because it's going to be important later on. Basically, perimeter and linear feet is what we're doing right now anyways. We're trying to get how much wall surface and how high area to go through it. So we just put these in here, right? One wall is 10.42, the other one's 15.6, and again and again. And then the total perimeter is going to be 52.18 because we use the sum command. And so it should be colored in so we know that's a formula. And some places we even lock the formulas, but for this purpose this would be good, especially because we're still trying things out. The height of the room is 8 feet, so multiplying the height times the length gets us an area, and it's going to be 417.44. That's the rough area, but we've got in the room, we've got a door here, and a window here. We've got to take those things out of the calculations. So again, we have the deducts. So after, this is like the gross square footage. And then this is the calculations to take it to the net. What are the actual surface we're painting? So again, what they do in the calculation sheets is they take the width of the opening or the cabinet, multiply it by the number of openings of the cabinet, and then multiply that by the height. Frankly, this could have gone in the other direction. They could have had width of openings, height of openings, and then number of openings. Same notion, just the way that it was written, and it's fine. Same thing. So that's the door. 2.67 is a 2'8" door according to the schedule. So it's 2.67. One of them, that's the total width, is 2.67 times the height, and that gives me the square feet. The other one is a 6 foot wide bypass door in the closet. So we've got 6 foot wide. There's only one of them. So of course you multiply that. This formula should be the multiplication of the width times the number of them. Same thing here with them. Actually, once you get these formulas done, you can copy them here and copy them here because the relationship of these numbers to the formula is the same. Well, the height of this is 6.67. That's 6'8", and again, that's the calculations. Same thing here, 6'1", 6'8". Now this is the window, and in the lecture when I gave it to you, I told you that hey, the windows are this high, 3.14 wide and 4.74 high. That's part of the information I gave you in the last lecture. So again, there's only one of them, so it's the same number. And then the height of openings, and so the square feet is this times this, right? Width times length is the area of a specimen. So that's it. And so finally, this one down here is the total deductions. And that's going to add the total of this one, and of this one. This plus this plus this. Again, Excel, when you click inside a cell, it shows you the numbers. Now, if you have more rows or less rows than I do, then of course these numbers won't be exact, will they? It'll be whatever the square feet of A is, square feet of B, and square feet of C is, that needs to be added together. Once you click inside a cell with formulas, just press escape to get out of it. It's better to do that because if you start clicking away, you all of a sudden get new numbers in there. You don't want that, so just press escape. All right, so that would be fine. All right, so we've got the total wall, we've got the total deducts. So now we're going to go back to here and kind of put the things together. We need to know, well, what is the final square footage? All right, so we take the square feet that we have is the total square feet. So it's basically the total gross, right, minus the deducts. What's left over is what we have to cover with paint. The total gross minus the deducts. And that is nice too in Excel. When you highlight the cells, when you highlight a formula, you'll get these colored, and you can find out what you're multiplying together, so you can visually see it. That looks good. I'm going to press escape. And then the number of coats of paint. In our lecture, we said that sometimes if you're repainting an existing wall, that instead of doing 2 full coats of paint, you might be able to get by with 30% less on the second coat, especially if it's the same color or very similar color to the original paint on the wall. So what you do is you multiply that by 1.7, because you're going to need at least 1 full coat and a 30% less of a second coat. 30% less of 1 is 7. And then this coverage, so then you multiply this. So there we have it, right? We're going to need enough paint to cover 586 and some odd decimals square feet of surface, because we're doing 344 twice, basically, or 1 and 1.7 times. All right, so then how much does the gallon cover? So this is how much you have to cover with the coats of paint we need to cover. How much does 1 gallon cover? And so this formula would be the total square footage divided by the gallons, the coverage. Right? So if this is how much square feet you need, divide it by how much 1 gallon will do, and then it tells us roughly how many gallons we need. And then to round it up to a whole number, we use the roundup function. So let's go back. How do we do that? What's that about? If you click on the cell here that has that roundup, and you click on the FX button here, it basically shows you what you're trying to do. Now, roundup, maybe you've never used it. Maybe you don't know what it is. You can go to Google. So I'm going to go here to Google, go Google search. I'm going to type in roundup to a whole number in Excel. Right? We're using Excel. You can see right here, there's a lot of options here. And so here it is, use the roundup function. And then if you click on this one, they'll tell you more about it and show you how to do it and all that. You use round down to round down towards 0. So round up rounds up away from 0, round down rounds down towards 0. And round to a specific multiple is the M round. And so there's all different rounds going on here that you can play with. So fine, we want to round up. We don't want to round down. So hit the FX. And so the first thing is, you need to tell it what number. So I want the cell, whatever's in this cell, to be rounded up. And then the number of digits. Basically saying, well, how many digits past the decimal point do you want to go? Well, I want a whole number, which means I want 0 digits. So, and here on the side kind of shows you a little tip. If I had the wrong information here, it would tell me something else. So just for example, what if I wanted it 1 step beyond? In other words, 1 decimal place. Notice how that got changed. If I want it 2 decimal places, it gives you an idea of what it is. How many decimal beyond it? So this rounds up to the next 100th at that point. But 0 is what we want. It's true. We click OK, and the formula should say 2 gallons of paint, which makes sense. That's exactly right. If it says something weird like 6 gallons of paint, then say, wait a second, we only need 1.4 here. What happened? So then we go down here and we added a step 6 and a step 7, labor and materials. These are extra materials. We've got paint. What other things do we need to have included in this? Same thing here. So we have the paint. Someone's got to put it on the walls. So the cost of paint we said was $47.98 per gallon. We need 2 gallons, so that's what it is. That's the formula, and sure enough, that's how you multiply it, right? The 2 gallons times that. But then I had this in the lecture just for some things to add. You, of course, would have a more detailed list if you needed that. And so this just adds up, again, to whatever this miscellaneous is. So we've got miscellaneous items to add to our total. And then we talked about this cost per square foot, the labor. And again, that's something that would be given to you or you'd have in your database or whatever based off past experience, what people usually charge for this kind of work. It will depend if it's a sloping wall or not, if they have to get some scaffolding, if it's 3 stories tall, maybe it's the interior of an auditorium or something like that. So there might be some other things to come into play. But right now we're saying that the person said that $1.50 to paint this room per square foot. That's the standard that typically is used for labor, or one of the possible ways to calculate labor for a space. So if I double click in here, that's what they told, and this is the formula that we wanted to use. And there's some discussion in class about this formula because they said, why couldn't you just do it, just multiply by 2? And that might be the solution to the problem, but in this situation, we have 1.7 coats of paint. The reason we have that 1.7 for the coats is because you need to use less of it to get good coverage, because it's a similar color to the color on the wall. The wall surface is still the same. This person's not charging $1.50 per how much paint they're painting on. They're charging $1.50 for how much wall surface they have to cover. So no matter what we do, we're going to have to include the entire wall. Even if you can get by 1.5 coats of paint, whatever the number that is, we need to move it up. The same thing, it has to be rounded up to the next whole number. So that's what we did here. So the cost of labor is the labor cost, which is 1.5 times the square footage we're covering, which is 3.4472, multiplied by the roundup of this number. So when we do that, because we have to do basically put 2 coats, even though the second coat is only 30% less, it still be 2 coats of coverage. So the square footage multiplied by the number of coats is going to be how many square feet of area this person is going to be covering times this. And we talked about in class, can we just do a double of this one, just this times 2? In this case, it would work. But again, what if this changes? What if this is only 1 coat of paint? This will be the most useful formula for our use. And so the total of the job is the material cost, the miscellaneous material cost, and the cost of labor. We add them all together, and you get this dollar amount. Now, if you don't have that dollar amount, I would like you to review all your numbers here with this. So I'll go kind of slow here. So did you have these formulas saying these numbers? If the answer is no, then click inside and see what you're doing differently. So that's a standard paint.